We do it 20,000 times a day, completely on autopilot. You are doing it right now while listening to this, breathing. Most of us think of it as just a background process. We think of it as mere survival, just keeping the biological lights on. But what if I told you that the way you inhale and exhale is actually the master control switch for your brain?
It really is the ultimate biological remote control. Every single breath you take is actively altering your neurochemistry. It changes your blood pH, it shifts your vascular tone, and it dictates whether your nervous system is preparing for a fight or settling into deep, focused work.
And that is exactly what we are diving into today, the hidden architecture of the breath. We are moving past the mystical, incense-burning stereotypes of breathwork and looking straight into the molecular science of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and elite cognitive performance. Because it turns out, your ability to focus, make decisions, and handle stress might just come down to how well you manage your alveoli.
Exactly. We tend to separate the mind and the body, assuming that solving a complex problem just requires us to push through and think harder. But every single thought has a metabolic cost. The brain is an incredibly expensive piece of machinery to run.
How expensive are we talking? Because physically it is relatively small, right? Just a few pounds of tissue locked inside our skulls.
It is tiny. It only makes up about 2% of your total body weight. Yet, it greedily consumes roughly 20% of your body's entire oxygen supply. Your neurons are constantly demanding oxygen to produce ATP, which is the foundational energy currency of your cells. They need that energy just to fire electrical signals, synthesize neurotransmitters, and maintain basic cognitive performance.
So when I am trying to focus on a massive data set or navigate a highly tense meeting, my brain is basically a high-performance sports car guzzling premium fuel.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And if the fuel delivery system you're breathing is inefficient, your cognitive performance instantly drops. Even subtle changes in oxygen delivery or blood flow will influence your attention span, your reaction time, your decision-making, and your overall mental clarity.
Okay, so the logical conclusion most people jump to is, I need more oxygen. Let me take massive, giant gulps of air. We see it all the time, right? People hyperventilating before a big athletic lift or a stressful event, thinking they are charging up their batteries. But more breathing isn't actually better breathing, is it?
Not at all. In fact, that is probably the single biggest and most pervasive misunderstanding in modern wellness culture. Overbreathing can actually starve your brain of oxygen.
Wait, hold on. Breathing more gives my brain less oxygen? That sounds completely backward. Break that down for me, because I think a lot of people are going to be very confused by that.
It is a paradox, and it all comes down to the misunderstood hero of our respiratory system, carbon dioxide. Most of us are taught that oxygen is the good guy, and carbon dioxide is just the toxic exhaust fume we need to expel as quickly as possible. But carbon dioxide is actually the key that unlocks oxygen.
The key? How does that work at a cellular level?
Think of your red blood cells, specifically the hemoglobin inside them, as a fleet of taxicabs. Their job is to pick up oxygen from your lungs and drive it through your bloodstream to your brain. But here is the catch. The doors to those taxis are locked. When the hemoglobin arrives at your brain cells, it will not let the oxygen out unless there is enough carbon dioxide present in the tissue. Carbon dioxide is essentially the payment required to open the door. This is a physiological phenomenon known as the Bohr effect.
Oh, wow. So if I am stressed out and panting, blowing off all my carbon dioxide, the taxis arrive at my brain, but the doors stay locked. The oxygen just drives right past the neurons that desperately need it.
Precisely. You could have 100% oxygen saturation in your blood, but if your carbon dioxide levels are too low from overbreathing or chronic hyperventilation, your blood vessels constrict and that oxygen cannot detach from the hemoglobin. You literally create a state of localized hypoxia in the brain. You are suffocating your mind while your lungs are full of air.
That is absolutely mind-blowing, and it makes so much sense when you think about panic attacks. People breathe faster to get more air, but they feel dizzy, foggy, and lightheaded because they are actually cutting off the oxygen supply to their brain by dumping all their carbon dioxide.
Exactly. You are destabilizing the exact chemical environment your brain relies on to function. And this directly impacts the prefrontal cortex, which is the brain's executive command center. That is the area responsible for planning, logic, and keeping your emotions in check. When oxygen delivery drops, the prefrontal cortex goes offline, and the more primitive, fear-driven parts of your brain take the wheel.
So if we are chronically stressed, which, let's face it, is the default state for modern humans, we are probably breathing in a shallow, rapid way all day long without even realizing it. We are practically walking around in a state of mild panic.
Yes, and your brain is constantly monitoring your breathing patterns to gauge how safe the environment is. Fast, chaotic, upper chest breathing sends a continuous alarm signal to the brain. It says, "We are in danger." It locks you into a sympathetic nervous system state, which is your classic fight or flight mode.
Which is great if you are running from a predator in the wild, but absolutely terrible if you are just sitting at a desk trying to answer an email.
Right. You do not need a fight or flight response for an overflowing inbox, but because of that shallow breathing, your brain gets bathed in stress hormones. Now, contrast that with slow, rhythmic, controlled breathing.
The kind of breathing we hear about in elite military training, or deep meditation. What is actually happening under the hood when we slow it down?
When you slow your breathing down, especially to a cadence of around 5 to 6 breaths per minute, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. This is your rest, digest, and recover mode. It increases your vagal tone, lowers your heart rate, and shifts your body out of survival mode.
5 to 6 breaths a minute, that feels like a very specific biological sweet spot. Is there a reason for that exact number?
It is not a magic number, it is about resonance. The cardiovascular and respiratory systems have natural oscillatory frequencies. When you breathe at that specific rate, you align those systems. It is like two pendulums syncing up perfectly. The body loves coherent rhythm. When your breath and heart rate synchronize, your brain interprets that as ultimate safety. The alarm bells shut off, the prefrontal cortex comes fully online, and you achieve a state of calm, sharp, executive focus.
It really is a steering mechanism. We have been walking around with this built-in neurohacking tool, and most of us just leave it on a chaotic autopilot. But I have to ask about the current cultural moment, because breathwork is everywhere right now online. You have influencers claiming certain breathing techniques can cure every disease, unlock hidden dimensions, and give you superpowers. Where do we draw the line between the biological reality and the internet hype?
It is a crucial distinction to make. The internet loves a mystical narrative. And yes, some extreme hyperventilation techniques can induce altered states of consciousness, mostly by starving the brain of oxygen and aggressively altering blood pH, just as we discussed with the Bohr effect. But that is not sustainable cognitive enhancement. That is just playing tricks on your physiology.
Right, inducing a massive stress response for a temporary high is not the same thing as optimizing your daily brain function.
Exactly. The real power is not in escaping reality, it is in biological precision. True respiratory intelligence is about using the breath to support autonomic balance, emotional regulation, and efficient cellular metabolism. Breathing practices absolutely support stress reduction and focus, but they are not magical superpowers. It is chemistry.
Which brings us to the future of all this. We are seeing a massive rise in wearables and artificial intelligence systems that are not just tracking your steps anymore. They are tracking respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, sleep architecture, and heart rate variability in real time.
And that is exactly where the field of cognitive optimization is heading. The future will not begin with stronger stimulants or more caffeine. It will begin with respiration. Imagine a future where your wearable detects that your breathing has become shallow and erratic before you even consciously feel the stress of the day.
So an AI dashboard could prompt you to adjust your respiratory cadence, shifting your nervous system back into balance before your cognitive performance actually degrades.
Precisely. We are moving toward an era of cognitive resilience driven by physiological awareness. We will finally understand how our moment-to-moment breathing behavior influences our capacity to think and perform. Because at the end of the day, oxygen delivery is the absolute foundation of human performance.
It completely reframes how we think about productivity and mental health. The modern world constantly demands that we think harder, work faster, and push through the fatigue. But maybe the brain does not need us to think harder. Maybe it just needs something much simpler, better oxygen, better rhythm, better regulation.
I could not agree more. Every emotion you feel, every brilliant idea you generate, every difficult decision you navigate, All of it is ultimately powered by cellular respiration. True cognitive mastery does not begin with a new app or pushing yourself to the brink of burnout. It begins with learning how to consciously control the invisible rhythm that keeps us alive.
The ultimate biological remote control, hidden in plain sight, right beneath our noses. Literally. As you move through your day to day, pay attention to that rhythm. Notice when you hold your breath. Notice when it gets fast and shallow. And remember that you have the power to change the architecture of your mind simply by changing the cadence of your breath.
It is a profound realization. Oxygen is not just about survival. It is the very foundation of your cognitive architecture.
A perfect thought to end on. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the molecular mechanics of the mind. Take a slow, deep breath, let the carbon dioxide do its job, and we will catch you in the next exploration of human potential.